What's happening, guys? Sam Adams here, and welcome to a brand new episode of Caffeinate today for April the 5th of 2019. My name is Samuel Adams, and welcome to today's show. Of course, as always, I hope that this one does find you well, and if you are brand new to the program, this is a daily gaming news podcast that is hosted right here on twitch.tv/TheSamuelAdams live 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time if you did want to drop by and check out the live show. Now, of course, it's then put up on YouTube and podcast services around the world if you did want to check out the show in a bit of a different format. But today, we've got some somewhat breaking news about Nintendo Labo, because late last night, a Nintendo tweet revealed that they are actually bringing VR support to Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey via the cardboard peripherals known as Nintendo Labo. We'll talk about that because that's a pretty big deal for a lot of reasons. Now, on top of that, Breach developer QC Games is closing its doors. Snapchat is launching a Mario Party-style multiplayer games platform. An interesting way to go about breaking into the gaming industry. Ubisoft says there are not going to be any more physical toys produced for Starlink Battle for Atlas. Super Meat Boy Forever has seen a delay and is pushed back into sometime after the April launch window, but not too far after the April launch window. The Windows Game Bar is getting new widgets, including Spotify and a meme maker. The Borderlands series has been review bombed on Steam, and Prince Harry is not a fan of Fortnite nor social media. I have one of those in common with him. I bet you can guess which one it is. It's not Fortnite, but that's pretty much the rundown of the topics we are going to be covering today, and I do hope you enjoy today's show. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it, shall we? Super Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild are both getting VR modes via Labo. A few weeks back, Nintendo announced a surprise Labo VR, a homemade VR kit that puts a Switch in a cardboard visor and allows it to act as a headset. While Nintendo has been fairly quiet about it since announcement, especially considering it comes out in just a matter of weeks, they have just announced that traditional games will also support VR modes, namely Super Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Arguably the two biggest games on the platform to date and of right now. While the trailer is a little unclear, it appears Super Mario Odyssey is just some VR modes and minigames like Note Collection. With the seeming lack of a head strap, Nintendo clearly doesn't want players spending too long inside the cardboard VR world. Zelda, however, it is not obvious how the game is supporting VR. It seems to just be a visor for the actual gameplay that relegates camera control to head movement. Considering how VR works, by splitting the image into each eye can view, by splitting the image so each eye can view two separate images as one 3D picture, it stands to reason that not every game will be able to support VR just through pure horsepower considerations. Attaching Labo to existing games is not a new idea, however, as controllers have gone back to support Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in the past. Still, it will be interesting to see if Nintendo does this with any other titles, and the author says, I think Captain Toad in VR could be pretty neat. With that being said, let's talk about the ones that have been confirmed, Super Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. I agree with what this article is bringing up in that it doesn't really make sense to bring VR to these games in the way that Nintendo is doing it. Now, don't get me wrong, it is incredibly cool that Breath of the Wild especially is getting VR support, but checking out the gameplay, I don't know if they didn't really know how to show that off or if they didn't have anything to show off, but it looks like it's pretty much standard Breath of the Wild gameplay that just changes the way that you actually, control yourself within the game. Whenever I think about VR, I primarily lend or try to go towards the first-person experiences. So whenever I heard Breath of the Wild VR, I immediately thought that we were going to be seeing Breath of the Wild in VR. I mean, imagine running around Hyrule in first person with a bow and arrow. That would be absolutely phenomenal. But with that being said, it doesn't look like that's exactly what we are going to be getting, and then with the Mario Odyssey support, it doesn't look like that's going to be quite your traditional VR experience either. But even with that being said, let's take a step back and talk about the fact that VR is actually happening on the Nintendo Switch. That in and of itself is amazing, and I said this on Twitter in reply to somebody else, and I will say it again. Whenever you go into Labo VR, do not expect a PSVR experience, do not expect an HTC Vive, don't expect anything on that level. This is quite frankly something more akin to Google's Google Cardboard, where you essentially put a phone inside of a cardboard sleeve. You are literally doing that exact same thing with Nintendo Labo and a Nintendo Switch. So you aren't going to be getting quite that AAA big, beefy experience like you get from an HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift, but it is a good way to try out VR for the first time. In a way, this is kind of like giving your first taste of VR to somebody if they have never experienced it before. It's not going to be the best experience they ever have in VR, but it's going to be a VR experience that they can try out and see if it's something they might be interested in more in the future, especially considering that the technology that is required to achieve VR in a, really good kind of way is becoming cheaper by the day. So with that being said, excited to see what they do with Nintendo Labo, especially with the Nintendo Labo VR Kit, but very cool to see that two of the biggest games on the Nintendo Switch are getting support for Nintendo Labo. And of course, we will see how this goes whenever the kit launches in just a couple of weeks, but still, very cool stuff. We'll be interested to see if they bring support for more games. That would be something that I would be definitely interested in learning more about. Now let's move on to the next story of the day. Breach developer QC Games is closing its doors. The Breach servers will remain online for now, but they will be going away too. Breach is an ambitious co-op dungeon crawler with echoes of Shadowrun, The Secret World, and Devil May Cry, released in January by a team of former BioWare and EA developers calling itself QC Games. It sounded promising, but was met with mixed results when it entered early access on Steam in January, and its peak player count of roughly 1,200 quickly cratered after release. Yesterday, QC Games announced that it's pulling the plug on both the game and the studio. Unfortunately, today is the last official day for QC Games as we begin winding down internal operations on Breach, it wrote in a thank you message. We are sure you've had a lot of questions about Breach, your accounts, and the future of the game. Our team is still working on defining what this means for Breach and for our community, and we will post an updated article soon with answers to as many questions as we can cover. Breach starter packs and QC points will be no longer available for purchase as of today, but the servers will remain online for now. Players who have made purchases recently can apply for refunds through Steam or QC Game support depending on where the purchase was made. Unfortunately, the fact doesn't contain any more actual information other than the thank you message on the Breach website, basically that the studio and the game are closing, stay tuned for details, and the Breach forums are already offline, so there's no hope of finding out more. I've reached out to QC, the author says, for more information and will update if I receive a reply, but no update has been given as of yet. Of course, as always, sucks to see a studio closing down, but Breach didn't hit the way that people thought that it would. Of course, this is from pretty prominent developers in the industry. Again, having people on the team from both BioWare and, of course, EA, that's a pretty big deal. But again, some games work, some games don't. It's just the nature of the industry. Even if a game might be phenomenal, even if a game might have a solid foundation, if it doesn't really take off at the very beginning, it doesn't matter how much money, how much manpower, how much passion you put behind it, it just, quite frankly, might not take off, and that's just a fact of the industry. So again, to those impacted by this closure, I do hope that you land on your feet, as I wish for everybody that ever loses their job, their occupation in the industry. But with that being said, if you are a fan of Breach, you better get some gameplay in, because it looks like that is going offline relatively soon. Also, hopefully they will, in fact, put out more information, because it seems like this was kind of like a, whoops, sorry, bye, and then they just disappeared, and it's like, okay, but we will see what happens over the next few days as that continues to evolve. Now, Snapchat is getting into the gaming industry because Snapchat is launching Mario Party-style multiplayer games via the app. Snap is unlocking a new revenue stream while giving you something to do between chats and stories. Today, Snapchat debuts its Snap Games platform that lets you play real-time multiplayer games with texting and talking with your friends. The platform is based on Snap's secret late 2017 acquisition of Pretty Great, an Australian game studio with talent from Halfbrick, which built Fruit Ninja, of course one of the best iOS games of the early iPod/iPhone era. That team built Bitmoji Party, a Mario Party-style minigame fest to show off the platform that includes 5 games from developers like Zynga and Zepto Lab. The games are rolling out worldwide on iOS and Android starting today if you did want to check them out. And to monetize the platform, Snapchat will let users opt into watching 6-second unskippable commercials that reward them with power-up or bonus in-game currency. Snapchat will share revenue from the ads with developers, though it refused to specify the split. It could be a little weird watching ads to more easily beat your friends, but down the line it's easy to imagine Snapchat selling cosmetic upgrades via in-app purchases akin to Fortnite. Snap announced the new Snap Games platform at its first ever press event, the Snap Partner Summit in Los Angeles, where it also announced an augmented reality utility platform, called Scam, an ads network, and a way to put its stories on other apps. We wanted to build something that makes us feel like we're playing a board game with a family over a long holiday weekend. Something that makes us feel like we're sitting with friends, controllers in hand, looking at the same screen, says Snap's head of gaming, Will Wu. The information's Tom Datan and Amir Efrati, I believe I said these names correctly, first reported Snap was building a gaming platform, and Cheddar's Alex Heath reported it would end up launching today. Snap Games could be considered a real-time spin on Facebook Messenger's Instant Games platform, which was focused on porting to HTML5 well-known asynchronous games like Pac-Man and other arcade titles. Similarly, Snap Games doesn't have to be downloaded separately, as they are piped in from the web. Users can browse available games by tapping a new rocket ship under the chat bar. Of course, there are plenty of more write-ups about these games you can dive in to see which ones you would like to check out, but Snapchat is getting into games, so if you happen to be a user of the messaging slash various uses platform, I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe what people use Snapchat for. You can dive in and check out some games if you are into that kind of thing. Of course, a lot of potential here because the goal for Snap is to keep people in the app. That's the goal for any social media platform. If you can keep people on your platform for the longest amount of time, you retain them longer. That's why Facebook is continuing to do so well in the face of so many accusations, and of course, accusations that have a good bit of evidence behind them. But Facebook is a perfect example of a way that a company is continuing to bring people in and keep them there throughout the day. You have Facebook Gaming that brings game streams to people. You have Facebook Marketplace that essentially has eliminated the need for Craigslist. Of course, you have Facebook in its own essence being a social media platform in which you constantly connect and communicate with your friends. There are so many different aspects of Facebook that keep people there, and Snapchat is simply branching out and trying to become a bigger part of that style of company. So again, if you do want to dive in and check out some of these games, of course, you're not going to be getting any kind of deep, hardcore gaming experiences, but if you happen to be a fan of the Facebook Messenger instant games, if you happen to like the iOS games, then you might be a fan of the Snapchat games, which apparently are going to be a big part of the company going forward. So, if you did want to dive in and check it out, those games are going live right now and will continue to exist for the foreseeable future until inevitably something happens and they go away. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's my prediction. But let's talk about Ubisoft, because Starlink, Battle for Atlas, is no longer going to have any kind of physical toys produced for it, but the game itself is not dying. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Ahead of Starlink Battle for Atlas's big free spring update coming later this month, Ubisoft has confirmed that it won't be releasing any more physical toys for the game due to lower than expected sales. When Starlink was first announced during E3 2017, Starlink's big gimmick was its accompanying range of real-life plastic ships, pilots, and weapons, which could all be snapped together and switched independently to bring different combinations in and out of play. So this is one of those toys-to-life games, for those that don't know, similar in a way to Skylanders, but a bit different, a little bit more in-depth, but it was a cool concept that just never panned out. At the time of its reveal, some pointed to the fact that other toys-to-life games, such as Skylanders and LEGO Dimensions, were already falling out of favor with the public. It's not entirely surprising, then, that Ubisoft has now explicitly confirmed that its toy range didn't exactly fly off the shelves. Starlink Battle for Atlas has been a passion project for us from the start, and we are incredibly proud of the modular starship technology we have developed and how well players have responded to it, the company wrote in a new blog post. Despite the immense and continuous support from our players, the sales for Starlink Battle for Atlas fell below expectations, it continued. Consequently, we have made the decision to not release any additional physical toys for the spring update, nor in the future. Although some might find the lack of new physical toys disappointing, and to be fair, the various ship parts released alongside the base game were all pleasingly designed and immensely satisfying in their clicky, snappy ways, it's not the end of the new stuff. Ubisoft says Starlink's spring update will include new digital ships, pilots, and weapons to collect. The free update, which is coming to Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Switch this April, will also add new missions, challenges, and activities to Starlink's open-world-esque galaxy, including Outlaw Racing and exclusively on Switch, new Star Fox missions. Personally, the author says, I've been completely and unexpectedly engrossed in Starlink over the last few weeks, having grabbed the digital edition on a whim during the recent Switch sale, and I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing more meat on its gorgeous, if somewhat limited bones. Starlink's core is frequently superb, battling through space and whizzing around those beautiful planets, doing odd jobs and holding back enemy tides. Feels marvelous, and the whole thing is wonderfully good-natured with bags of personality. There just aren't quite enough different ingredients to stave off sense of excessive repetition in later hours, though so much more stuff could go down a treat. So if you do want to dive into Starlink, it is getting a big update, but if you did want to collect the toys, you're not going to be able to catch them all, in the words of Pokemon. That's kind of unfortunate. Again, the physical toys, especially in the gaming industry, are so incredibly collectible. I mean, still today, if you go on eBay, there are so many people that are trying to sell Skylanders stuff, and so many people buying that stuff. And as time goes on, that's going to become a bigger commodity in the collectors community. And so I think this is going to be a big deal going forward. I think that you're not going to be hearing the last of the physical, amenities of Starlink. You're not going to be hearing the last of Starlink overall. I think that in 10 years you could see this stuff going for a pretty penny, but that's just my opinion. Again, as somebody who is kind of into collectibles and antiques, you're going to be seeing this stuff go up in price as time goes on and as it becomes more scarce. As of right now, though, the game itself, I've heard good things about if you did want to dive in and give it a shot. Again, the Toys to Life aspect of it not going away, but there isn't going to be any kind of new content coming out in the IRL, as the kids say. Now, I do want to point something out before I move on. As Tim's, I believe I said that correctly in the chat, says, wow, I wish I could talk that fast without tripping up. Oh no, you must be new here because we've had some doozies in the past. But with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next story of the day. Super Meat Boy Forever is going to miss its April launch window, a very unfortunate one for those of us that are fans of the indie game. Super Meat Boy Forever is going to miss its April launch window, developer Team Meat announced on Thursday. We've been knocking out the last bits of Super Meat Boy Forever at record speeds while keeping a healthy and sustainable pace, the developer tweeted. We are going to keep that pace, which means we will not hit our April 2019 release. Sorry about that. We could have sacrificed our minds, bodies, and social lives to make April 2019, but that's stupid. Team Meat isn't some studio owned by an evil asshat corporation. Notably, pause, evil asshat corporation, capital E, capital A. Burn. That has say over what we do and how we do it. We are fortunate enough to have control over how we work, and we choose not to run ourselves into the ground. And again, that entire statement is up on Twitter if you did want to check it out. Super Meat Boy Forever was originally supposed to be an endless runner on mobile platforms, but Team Meat eventually decided to turn it into a full-fledged sequel to their hit 2010 platformer, one that kind of kicked off the development of so many incredible indie games. The game was lauded by critics for its precise controls, challenging gameplay, and retro aesthetic. It was also a commercial success, selling over 1 million copies by 2012 alone. Super Meat Boy Forever is now coming to mobile, PC, and consoles after, but not too far after, April of 2019. Team Meat said that it will reveal a concrete launch date for the game when it releases the next teaser trailer. So, of course, the charm of this announcement is the fact that it calls out EA in the best way possible, where it's kind of underhanded, but it kind of is something that needs to be said, because one of the best parts about working for an indie studio, and again, this is coming from somebody who does not work for an indie studio, but from the outside looking in, the independence to be able to develop when you need to develop, to be able to do what you need to do, to make the game the best game possible seems incredible. It seems like a foundational idea that you would expect to be existent throughout the industry, but it's not. Sometimes there are deadlines, and sometimes features have to be cut, sometimes quality has to come before the release date, or after the release date, I apologize. It's one of those situations where to be able to develop in a way that makes the most sense for your game and for your community is incredible. And that's why I'm excited about Super Meat Boy Forever, because the guys behind the scenes at Team Meat do one thing incredibly well, amongst a variety of things that they do incredibly well, and that's that they make good games. Super Meat Boy would not be as popular as it is today without it being a genuinely good game. I am so excited to see what happens with it. Just huge. It's going to be one of the biggest indie games of 2019. So if you did want to dive into it, of course, you can follow Team Meat over there on Twitter, but the game should be coming out sometime after April of 2019. Now let's talk about this Windows game bar. Of course, a big part of Windows 10 for those that play games An underutilized one nonetheless, but still a big part of it. But it's getting new widgets, including Spotify and a meme maker. So Microsoft wants to give you more reason to use the game bar, Windows' built-in tool for capturing video and screenshots while you're playing games. Guess what that means? It's meme time. In the next build of Windows coming for Xbox Insiders, Game Bar is getting some new features, including a Spotify widget and embedded meme-making tools for slapping some crazy text onto your screenshots. I can't wait to write honk honk on a screenshot of my favorite Forza car and then go extremely viral, says the author. That won't happen. Jokes about billion-dollar companies making meme tools aside, Microsoft's ideas for Game Bar are cool. It's expanding the overlay with a number of widgets for more than just recording gameplay. The Spotify widget will make it easier to play custom music while gaming without switching apps. A new chat widget will pull in your Xbox Live friends list so you can send messages, see what they're playing, or see what they are streaming on Mixer. And thankfully, you'll be able to customize this widget layout and hide widgets you don't want. With this update, you'll be able to pin the ones you do want to actually stay above your game screen when you hide the overlay, so you could keep a performance overlay up or even a Mixer stream to watch someone while you play. Unfortunately, these social features are limited to Microsoft's own services right now, but that doesn't seem to be written in stone. In the initial release, we are going to do Xbox Live friends, then listen to user feedback, Xbox platform director Jason Ronald told the author. These new features will make Game Bar a bit more like Steam or Nvidia GeForce Experience overlays, and the potential for it is obviously great because it's a part of Windows. It'll work for any game. As it is now, though, Game Bar's video recording settings, which are buried in unintuitive Windows menus, are also woefully limited compared to GeForce Experience. I hope to see options as granular as Nvidia's in the future. Right now, there are simply better user tools for the job than Game Bar, even if they're not quite as universal. But with the potential audience of everyone on Windows, again, let's reiterate, everybody on Windows, and it's got a lot of potential here. So if you did want to check it out, of course, you can be on the Xbox Insider Hub and get in on that. But big news here, because the Xbox, Insider program is big in and of itself, but to have a lot of changes coming to the Windows 10 gaming experience is something that I think is going to be a big part of Windows gaming going into 2019 and beyond, because I think the Windows Game Bar has an incredible amount of potential to be able to push a button and have access to a variety of options that enhance your gaming experience is something that is fantastic, especially in a world where you don't just sit down and play a game. You don't just sit down and stare at your monitor for hours on end. You might be playing a game and streaming it, keeping up with the chat. You might be watching somebody else stream something. You might even, if you are into that kind of thing, listen to music on the side, or even watch a movie or something in the background. People play games in a variety of ways, and so to have the Windows Game Bar functioning in a way that opens that up to a variety of options of how you want to play your game and the amenities you want inside that game, that's fantastic and something that I think could definitely be improved upon. So again, if you did want to check it out, that is going to be coming out relatively soon if you did want to check out this new overlay coming to the Windows Game Bar. Again, it's fine now, but hey, it's going to be even better. Now let's talk about this Borderlands series review bombing going on Steam right now, of course, to protest Epic's store timed exclusivity for Borderlands 3. The Borderlands series and its DLC has had a huge influx of negative reviews in the wake of the news that Borderlands 3 will in fact be an Epic Game Store exclusive. Disgruntled gamers are out in force again, review bombing titles on Steam over exclusivity deals they are not happy with. Following the announcement that Borderlands 3 is going to be a 6-month timed exclusive on the Epic Store, they've flocked to Steam in their droves to leave negative reviews on anything Borderlands related. I'm talking Borderlands 2, Borderlands Game of the Year, the Enhanced Game of the Year, Borderlands the pre-sequel, and pretty much all of the DLC you can find on Steam. Even Telltale's Tales from the Borderlands did not get a reprieve. The negative reviews, name-checked the Epic Store and include ASC2, Art of Hands Flipping the Bird, which also pops up in some positive reviews as well from those players who like the games but are still pissed off. It's not all bad news though, as other Steam users are swooping in to combat this with a slew of positive reviews. This exact situation played out in January when Metro Exodus' 1-year Epic Store timed exclusivity was announced, resulting in the Metro series as a whole getting swamped with negative reviews. Last month, Epic Game Store head Steve Allison said the company doesn't want a repeat of the Metro incident, referring to the way the news was announced. Even Valve was annoyed by it. Borderlands 3's deal with the Epic Game Store has been announced months ahead of its September release, but it's possible that CEO Tim Sweeney's comments on Epic's continued campaign to snag exclusives has riled people up even more. And of course, there's other Borderlands news if you did want to check it out, but the game is coming out on September the 13th on the PC via the Epic Game Store, as well as the Xbox One and the PS4. Again, this is something that I feel like is pretty expected at this point because there are a lot of people that are still upset about the Epic Game Store exclusivity. And again, I kind of understand it, but at the same time, it's just part of the industry at this point. I saw a Reddit post, I believe, or a tweet, something like that, where everybody's been complaining about the console wars and how PC users never had to worry about this, where you just have, everybody sitting around in a fight circle, and you see Xbox and PlayStation beating each other in the middle of it while all of these launchers look on, and that's hilarious because that's exactly what it is. It's no longer PC gamers. It's like Uplay and Steam and Epic Game Store and Origin and all these other various storefronts and stuff like that, all fighting around this new PlayStation 4 versus Xbox One thing. But that to the side, I understand the anger at this. I understand the frustration. But at the same time, it's not that big of a deal for me. Could be for other people. But again, the launcher is free. It's literally right beside your Steam icon on your desktop. It's not that big of a deal. But if you are that adamant about it, you can just wait 6 months and boom, there it is. And probably by that time, it might even be cheaper. Who knows? That could be a thing too. Doubtful, but it could be a thing. However, review bombing going on right now. Did want to let you guys know that if you do happen to be brand new to Borderlands and you log on to Steam and see, wow, this has mixed reviews, fear not, it's still fantastic. It's just a whole bunch of dissatisfied people right now. But now let's talk about a game that has been in the news a good bit over the course of the past couple of years, and of course recently because the patches have essentially annihilated the fan base. But ban Fortnite. Prince Harry says the game should not be allowed. God save the llama, says the author at GameSpot. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, and sixth in line for the Royal British Crown, has sharply criticized the popular battle royale game Fortnite and called for it to be banned. The BBC reports that Harry's comments came at a YMCA event in London just before the Gaming BAFTA Awards. Fortnite shouldn't be allowed, he said. Where is the benefit of having it in your household? It's created to addict, an addiction to keep you in front of a computer for as long as possible. It's so irresponsible. It's like waiting for the damage to be done and kids turning up on your doorsteps and families being broken down. He also suggested that social media is more addictive than alcohol and drugs. These comments come as the Epic Games developed title continues to grow in popularity. It's arguably the biggest game in the world, having become a cultural sensation. Epic recently announced that Fortnite had crossed 250 million registered players with a new concurrent player record of 10.8 million players. And it's still going strong despite increased competition from Black Ops 4's Blackout and Apex Legends. So, of course, we have a lot of this kind of discussion going on in 2019 with the new classification, as the article mentions, by the World Health Organization as gaming disorder being a thing now. But, of course, the fact of the matter here is that whenever you have a child that is addicted to a game, that will not get off of a game, that cannot be taken away from the game, that's not an issue with the game existing. That's not an issue with the nature of the game. That's an issue with the nature of parenting. As somebody who grew up playing games, and grew up playing a lot of games, whenever my mom would come in and see that I had been there for, 4, 5, 6 hours, that would be turned off immediately, and I would have to go do something else, because that's called parenting. Whenever you're talking about what needs to be done going forward, it's not that a game should be banned. It's not that Fortnite should not exist or be banned from any kind of country whatsoever. It's the fact that parents need to take responsibility for their children, especially when it comes to gaming, and tell them to go out, achieve things, do other things, be individuals in society that are more than just people that sit there and play Fortnite all day. That's just my 2 cents on it, but I feel like there's a lot of credence to that. I feel like that carries a lot of weight. But, again, I also think that there is something to be said about social media and the nature of it. That's a different story for another day, because social media is very much so made to addict people. I, for one, feel completely and totally helpless in my addiction to Twitter, but that is a topic for a different conversation. When it comes to the gaming stuff, as we cover on the podcast, that's a parenting issue when you've got some kid that just sits there all day and plays Fortnite. That's that. But with that being said, that wraps up today's episode of Caffeinate. Of course, if you did enjoy today's show, be sure to drop me a like down below if you are watching on YouTube. And of course, for those joining me live in the chat, I appreciate you hanging out with me, and I'm glad that the show is enjoyable for you. Of course, it's hosted 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time if you did want to check it out. And then it's up on YouTube and podcast services around the world. But until next time, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the weekend. I will talk to you soon, and peace.